A day in the life of the product manager will usually consist of making many decisions, big and small, that will have profound implications for short-term plans, long-term results, and the happiness and engagement of the people around you. Life as a product manager can often feel like just one long sequence of trade-offs. So let's dig into some things that you can do to improve your decision making as a PM. If you had perfect information, decision making would be pretty easy. It would be obvious which decision to take every single time. But we simply never have that. And the problem gets worse and the stakes higher the more senior you become. So what do we do? Well, first and foremost, we need to prune options that will not lead you closer to your most important goals. It's very easy to get pulled off track by noise. If you're looking at an option that sounds good, but doesn't have you following your North Star, it probably isn't a path worth taking right now. In very rare cases, the decision you might need to make may force you to reevaluate your goals and their relative priorities, but that is pretty uncommon. Now, once you've done that pruning, you're left with decisions that each should theoretically advance you towards one or more of your goals. So, next up is to get a sense of risk. What are the things that can go wrong if we happen to choose badly? In many cases, the downside is really the loss of time, and that's not nothing. But in other cases, you may be faced with decisions that are truly one-way streets, and once you've made the call, you have to make it work. There's no going back. In these cases, you'll want to weigh the risks very, very carefully. Now, once you have a sense of the risk and you're down to decisions that advance your goals, you're left with really one last major piece of analysis to do, which is to evaluate the opportunity costs. Opportunity cost is an economics term, and it refers to the cost of not doing something. For example, if I have a choice between A and B, picking A means that I am not picking B, and there's a consequence to B not being achieved. An example of this might be choosing something that the users will have been clamoring for versus something that might improve your product's competitiveness. The fact that you're helping your users comes at the cost of helping your product's market share. That is an important trade-off to be able to consider. So once you've done this analysis, and after a while you'll become so comfortable with it that it literally happens on the fly and even in your head for some of the smaller decisions, my recommendation would be to walk through your thinking with some interested stakeholders. You don't have to be an island, and sometimes someone will think of something that you just flat out missed. However, your path to resolution will be faster if you form the initial hypothesis and then go through it with the stakeholders, including your reasoning. Groups of people are really good at evaluating proposals and not so good at making decisions from scratch. This also has the benefit of helping people feel included in rather than victimized by the decision-making process. They may still not agree with your decision in the end, but they will understand it better and feel that their concerns and inputs have at least been heard. So let's use a relatively simple hypothetical example to bring all of this together and put it into practice. As a product manager, one of the most common decisions that you might need to make is between features. Let's say for the moment that your data and research have identified two good candidates to take on next. Feature A, the user community has been asking for this, they've been clamoring for it for a while, and you are confident they will be delighted if it arrives. Great. Feature B, your win-loss analysis is showing you that not having this feature is beginning to cost you deals because your competitors, well, they all can do it. So those sound both like good options, right? It seems like there isn't a bad answer in there, but maybe one is better than the other. So let's start by looking at whether any of these steer us from our goals. In each of these cases, we know who these features are for and what they provide. One is clearly for the users and one is clearly for the buyers. One of our stated goals needs to be to keep both interests in balance and not skew too far in one direction versus the other. So we do a quick look at what released recently and what we've got coming in the backlog, and we see whether that balance overall feels good. And let's assume for the moment that it does, so both decisions will pass the speaks to our goals hurdle. Next up is the risk assessment. What can go wrong? Feature A, we have good data suggesting that the feature is wanted and needed. So let's assume for this particular feature that we will need to license a third-party technology. There is some risk in choosing the wrong vendor, licensing costs, and so forth. Those can be itemized pretty easily. For feature B, we have anecdotal evidence, and make no mistake, that's all win-loss really is, that states that the company has lost deals because of the absence of this feature. So it is probable that introducing this feature mitigates those losses going forward. However, it's not a guarantee. There is the obvious risk that we could make the change and not see a difference in close rates. We would simply see a different reason for not winning the business. So both A and B carry the usual execution risk, just flat out building it wrong or building, the wrong thing and turning excitement and hype into disappointment and disengagement. Luckily, being the agile powerhouses that we are, we'll iterate with the customer community to try to mitigate that risk, making this overall a bit of a wash. So last, let's look at the opportunity costs. For feature A, if we didn't do it, customers would go longer without something that they desperately want. Assuming that customers aren't revolting, this is mainly a time-based cost. However, if customers are threatening to churn in the absence of this feature, you have a possible downside of that churn. For feature B, the cost of not doing it is that we're doing nothing to help the salability of the product. The presumptive competitive hole will remain, giving the competitors a longer run with that advantage, and we will probably continue to lose some percentage of deals until it's addressed. So in a vacuum, and not having a feature C, D, E, and F to also be evaluating at the same time, I would look at this analysis and I would probably conclude that feature B is the right thing to build next. While I generally do not advocate doing what the competition does, I'll do a video on that probably in the next few weeks, we have in this instance some data that suggests that it is costing us business. In a mature market, features quickly become table stakes, and it is less about whether your competitors are ahead of you and more about whether you have the baseline capabilities that your markets expect. It is generally bad to fall too far below that baseline for any period of time. So with that reasoning in hand, I'd be inclined to go and talk with a few key stakeholders in my company and see if there's anything important that I've missed. Then I would proceed with confidence. And that is a wrap for this video. If you found it useful, please do consider liking and subscribing. By doing that, you'll be sure to catch each video as it arrives. Drop me a comment and let me know, as a PM, what are the most challenging decisions that you're called on to make? Thanks very much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.